21st century America anyway, if you stay past 11, and some hotels might be a little hard-nosed about this, they may charge you for an extra day because checkout time was 11. It wasn't 24 hours. That's okay. That's not the rules that the hotel owners play by. So even in 21st century America, we may use times occasionally in different ways than people did 2,000 years ago. Just like 2,000 years ago, people calculated time, used phrases that may seem somewhat foreign to us today. The critics say that Jesus was a thief, a liar, disrespectful, a false prophet. Well, we can go through passage after passage after passage, and with a little explanation, using both reason and the Scriptures, and show how Jesus was not who the critics are claiming that He was. He was not a hypocrite. He was not dishonest. He was not a false prophet. He was not disrespectful. And as Kyle has already addressed for us, the resurrection of Christ is very remarkable. Very important. One of the last criticisms I want to show you, the very last one in this lecture, has been one that certain critics have made in times past, that Jesus' resurrection is unremarkable because there were other resurrections, you see. Notice this statement from one critic of Christ. He said, "Why would it," referring to Jesus' resurrection, "be of any consequence, since many others rose before Jesus? By the time He arose, this was a rather common occurrence. I would think it would have been met with a resounding yawn rather than surprise followed by, 'So what else can you do?' Adam's act of coming into the world as a full-grown adult is more spectacular than Jesus' resurrection." The critic says, "Well, I read in the Old Testament where Elisha and Elijah, they raised a couple of widow sons who had died. I read in my Bible where there was a man who was buried and he touched the bones of Elisha and his life came back to him. I can read where Jesus rose people from the dead. I can read where Eutychus was raised from the dead by Paul. You can read about various resurrections. So Jesus' resurrection, they say, is not remarkable at all. What makes Jesus' resurrection remarkable? Well, the fact is, there are several things that make Jesus' resurrection remarkable. One of those would be simply that the Bible indicates that His resurrection is different. Now you say, "Eric, what kind of reasoning is that?" Well, think about this for a moment. Are there things that Jesus did that others did, but the fact Jesus did them, they were to prove, those actions help prove who He was? Consider the miracles that He worked. Did other people work miracles besides Jesus? Yes. Did the apostles and prophets of old and prophets in New Testament times, did they occasionally work miracles? Yes. Did those miracles prove that they were God in the flesh? No. They didn't. They were worked to confirm the message that they were preaching about either the coming Messiah or the Messiah who had come. And so their miracles confirmed what they were teaching. But Jesus' miracles, you remember, from John chapter 10, verses 24 and 25, where Jesus, responding to the criticism, "If you are the Christ, tell us plainly," Jesus answered, you remember, saying, "I told you and you did not believe me. The works I do in my Father's name, they bear witness of me." You see, Jesus worked miracles. Others worked miracles, but Jesus' miracles were different because He not only worked them, but as He worked them, He claimed, "The very works that I do," He said, "they bear witness of me," John chapter 5 and verse 36. Jesus' miracles were different because He said they were different. They proved He was God. Do you see any others working miracles in New Testament or Old Testament times claiming they were the Messiah and backing that up with miracles? Not at all. Think about the parallel with the resurrection. How many people rose from the dead claiming to be the Messiah? None. Jesus rose from the dead. And the Apostle Paul tells us that Jesus was declared to be the Son of God with power according to the Spirit of holiness by what? By the resurrection from the dead. Romans chapter 1 and verse 4. Jesus' resurrection is set apart because He said it was different. It is set apart, as we've already discussed in this seminar, because the Old Testament prophets prophesied about the resurrection of Christ, and in Acts chapter 2 and in Acts chapter 13 you have the apostles talking about how the prophecies about Jesus' resurrection, they were fulfilled in Jesus Christ. You have also, making Christ's resurrection different, the very fact that He prophesied He was going to rise from the dead. You ever remember Eutychus saying before he fell asleep and died that he was going to rise from the dead? Jesus did. He prophesied about it. It makes it different. And then, most important, Jesus rose from the dead. never to die again. He ever lives, the Bible says, to make intercession for us. That fact makes His resurrection remarkable, not unremarkable. The criticisms about Jesus being a thief, or Jesus being a liar, or Jesus being disrespectful, or being a false prophet, or His resurrection not being very remarkable, are baseless criticisms. The fact is, Jesus Christ is the unique, heaven-sent, virgin-born, miracle-working, truthful, honest, perfect Son of God.